views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of Time Warner Cable.
Monthly program brought to you by the Maine State Chamber of Commerce. Each month, as you have become accustomed, we take a look at some of the policy programs that work in our state, helping to grow our economy, or, on the other hand, standing in the way of growth in our economy. Today, we're going to take a look at, for the entire show, an issue that the state has been dealing with for some time, an issue that's very important to the future of our economy, but one I must confess we're struggling with today. That's tax incentives. We call them business tax expenditures or business tax or incentives, but they mean the same. They're there to help our businesses grow from within our state, but to also attract businesses to invest from away in our state as well. We have two segments today. The first segment, we're going to take a look at two people very engaged in the tax incentive programs in our state. One is the Chamber's own Linda Caprera. You've seen her before. She's been on our program, so you know that she follows tax-related issues in the legislature. And we're also privileged today to have Doug Ray from the Department of Economic and Community Development. Doug sees this firsthand as a communications director, but also legislative liaison. Thank you both for being with us today.
Thank you.
Extremely important concept, and I'm pleased that we can spend the entire half hour. Linda, I'm going to start with you. This is your teaching moment. When we talk about tax incentive programs, business tax expenditures, they're one of the same. How would you describe what they are in general terms to the public that's watching this program today?
Well, when you're thinking of business tax expenditures in the state, there's two categories. There's sales tax exemptions and there's business tax programs. And over the years, the legislature has enacted sales tax exemptions to basically prevent certain transactions from being taxed, which would result in double taxation, and really to keep Maine businesses competitive because most other states have the same exemptions. So if Maine were not to do that, they would be uncompetitive.
An example?
The sales tax on energy used in manufacturing, that's one.
Or products in production.
Products used in production. Yeah. If you were to tax these items all through the process, you'd have to add it into your final cost of the product, which, as you know, competition's very high today.
Yeah.
You add 1 more cent in some cases to some products, and you've taxed yourself out of the market.
Yeah, for sure.
The other side of this is business tax programs, like the BETTER program, the Business Equipment Tax Reimbursement Program, Pine Tree Zones, ETIF, a lot of different tax programs that the legislature has enacted on the books that, again, help Maine grow the economy. They help keep Maine businesses competitive, and they eliminate disincentives to investment. And these programs have been absolutely critical to attracting investment to the state, both current and future, and really job creation. I mean, this has been absolutely instrumental in retaining jobs and creating jobs. So Maine is very modest in its approach to these tax incentives. Many other states go way above and beyond what Maine does, and Maine is really, I would say, modest in what they offer.
Doug, let's talk about that for a moment. You're in a business, you see firsthand how they work. Are they working? Do they work for Maine? Because there's a lot of skepticism around their value and need. Give us firsthand. How is it? Does it work?
It's important. We talk about them as expenditures.
Yeah.
But you have to look at that other side of the coin. I think that's very critical. Is you have to look at what these are investments, and these are very precious investments. We are talking about foregone tax dollars to attract new investment to the state. That's what it's all about. We all want good new private investment. We want good paying jobs, and in order to get that, you have to provide the competitive environment to attract that type of investment. Maine is unique because a lot of the investments, incentives, certainly within the Department of Economic and Community Development, the Pine Tree Zone program, one of the big ones, they're performance-based. So if you're not, we're not writing checks and giving money out to businesses for an action they haven't already done.
So you make an investment first, you receive the benefit after that
Correct.
investment. Yeah,
Yes.
that's significant because too often they're characterized as a giveaway. And we've seen instances in other states where other states will put up a cash advancement
Right.
Oh,
for a company to
absolutely, yeah.
locate. Yeah, not the case in Maine.
No, it's not,
yeah.
for the Pine Tree Zone program, especially, it's based on new investment and new job opportunities that are either businesses relocating to the state or expanding its footprint within the state of Maine. And in order for that to happen, they need these incentives in order to create, really what we're doing is trying to simulate a competitive tax environment. And certainly, the governor has been focused since he took office on improving that for all of industry and all of Maine, not just these targeted sectors that we have in the Pine Tree and other types of programs.
You mentioned something that you both have been witness to and advocated for, as Chamber has, as well as DCD has and the state has, and that is, the business equipment tax reimbursement program. We see the evidence today of a struggling paper industry, and we know how important that program has been to addressing productivity, helping to level the playing field with other states who are charging taxes. So on one hand, those programs are to create jobs. Another is to maintain the competitiveness with other states. They have great value in positioning us as a state in the economy.
With the Better program, you don't get anything unless you invest. Basically, you don't get a dime unless you invest. And particularly for capital-intensive industries around the state, they have to continually continue investing to either up their production process, either make a better quality product. I mean, you have to constantly be concerned about that in the business environment.
I'm going to pursue a point that I think needs to be aired out here, for lack of a better word, and that is, as we talk about these programs, it's hard to dismiss their value or their importance, and yet in the last several years, we have struggled with making sure people understood their relevancy. Can you share with us, Linda, to begin with, what has been our experience? Expand upon what I said in terms of the legislature and how they're looking at these issues.
I mean, these programs have been constantly under attack over the last several years, and it's really troublesome. It really is troubling because they're working. The legislature this past session took a step to enact legislation to review tax expenditures. They're going to review all the expenditures on the books through OPEGA, which is the Office of Program Evaluation and Government Accountability. They're also going to do some of that through the Taxation Committee. So they're going to review all these tax expenditures to see if, in fact, they're working and they're working effectively. But really, the last session, they eliminated a number of them, just like that in the budget. The Jobs and Investment Tax Credit. They eliminated a number of credits, particularly in the high-tech industries that would have affected those industries, the research and development industry. They eliminated those credits just like that. And it really is troubling because we're trying to attract those businesses here to the state.
And those are the types of industries of our future.
Industries of our future.
Absolutely. Let's talk about our offering as compared to other states. Linda had mentioned that ours are modest, and I believe that to be true. Would you say that is the case?
I think if you had to put, Maine on a scale, we are right in the middle, maybe where, other type of New England states would be. But, we're not just competing against New England states. We're competing against Canada, against Mexico, against China. Companies can go wherever they want nowadays, and we have to look at energy costs. We have to look at tax reform, and in order for Maine to even make the short list, if you have a site selector, that is looking on behalf of a client or an executive that is looking to invest money in a business in a certain location, Maine oftentimes doesn't even get on the radar because we have our the limitations we have, and we've got to improve the competitive climate.
So your incentive programs can really be a game changer if you can come close to competing in some of these other areas, that these incentives truly do make a difference.
Absolutely. We saw this a year or two ago, and Linda, in the tax committee, they looked at the sales and use tax exemption for aircraft parts.
Right.
And and that we have seen tremendous growth in the airline industry,
Yeah.
the CNL in Bangor and Maine Aviation down in Portland. And they were just talking about extending out the sunset date
Right,
on this.
right.
It hadn't even expired yet, but there was, it created some panic within the business community, and rightfully so, that they were looking at potentially not extending this.
Right.
And companies, need that reassurance that these are going to be here, that these,
Oh, absolutely, yep.
that these incentives and these
Predictability.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
it's huge.
I want to close out on your segment, believe it or not. We got about 2 minutes left with another problem that's imminent, that's before us this November the 3rd, and that is we've talked about how we've lost some. Now in this initiative question that the voters will be asked to vote on, it takes money away from tax incentive programs and gives it to candidates to run for state office. Another erosion from programs that we need to build our economy.
Question 1 on the ballot is the proponents of this ballot measure are calling it, it's all about clean elections. It's not. It does a few things to change the current law on clean elections, but in reality what this is going to do is the funding mechanism of this ballot measure is going to take $6 million from Maine businesses in the state and put it to funding political campaigns. Very troubling. $6 million is a huge amount of money. We're talking about 80% of Maine businesses in the state are small businesses.
Yeah.
And they're individuals, they're partnerships, they're LLCs. We're talking about taking $6 million out of the pockets of Maine businesses and funding political campaigns with this measure. This is really troubling. It really, I think, risks future and current investment in the state, and it's going to impact jobs. There's no question about this is going to impact jobs.
Yeah.
And this is really troubling, I think. And if Maine people knew what this measure actually did, it's not about clean elections, it's about taking money out of Maine businesses in the state, the job creators. So
We're going to be right back to talk about one of the programs that we've hinted about in this first segment, under review and for this OPEGA's first efforts. But before we do that, I'd like to take a moment to remind you of a very special event happening on Friday, October the 30th at the Augusta Civic Center. The State Chamber is hosting our annual meeting that evening, and hope all of you are able to join us in saying thank you to our senior senator, Susan Collins. From her hometown of Caribou, Maine, to the far corners of the globe, Senator Collins is widely respected for her willingness to cultivate discussion, to move legislation forward, and her ability to forge compromises with colleagues on both sides of the aisle. Among the evening's many features, we will be presenting her with the 2015 Alton Chuck Chinquette Business Hall of Fame Award. Like Chuck, Susan Collins embodies the very best qualities in a leader, that of compassion, courage, and commitment. On behalf of the citizens of our great state, the Maine State Chamber is humbled to have this opportunity to express our thanks to Senator Collins. We hope you will as well. Registration information is available on our homepage at mainechamber.org. Check it out, and we hope to see you there. Bruce Wagner, CEO of the Finance Authority of Maine. Bruce was with us last month when we talked about FAME's role in helping our students with education. Today, we're going to be talking with Bruce about one of his programs that we've just heard about in terms of the tax incentives of our state and how they help grow business. This time, he's going to be talking about the New Markets Tax Credit and how that goes about helping to grow our economy. Bruce, a regular, welcome back.
Thank you, Dan. A pleasure to be here.
You did such
again.
a great
Thank you
job
for
last
having me
time.
back.
The audience demanded that you come back. So here you are. That's
kind.
great.
Thank you.
New Markets Tax Credit. That's one of those programs that was referred to in our first segment under the business tax that's up for review. In fact, it's one of the first of the three to be reviewed in this current time. We've got No, we don't have business equipment down. We have Pine Tree Zones, we have the ETIF, and we have New Markets. Can you tell us about New Markets tax credit? It was fashioned after a federal program. We passed it in 2011.
That's right.
Fill in the
we
rest of
passed
that
in
story.
2011, and you're correct. It's patterned after a federal program, and the idea is that for every dollar invested in a low-income community, that's the key here.
Yep.
That the investment has to go into an area that really needs the investment. There'd be 39-cent tax credit, and that tax credit would be paid over a period of 7 years after the investment has been made. There's actually no money comes or flows back to the investing company in the first 2 years, and then it's done in 7% and 8% increments in the remaining 5 years.
So those companies, we go into a community that has the status of being distressed, lower income, and the company makes the investment in what? Are there criteria in which they must make those investments, like infrastructure, capital, type of thing?
Yes, they really have to be investing, and particularly we want to see good manufacturing jobs, and that's been the bulk of the new market tax investment credits we've had, although there are exceptions to that. There are certainly programs into art centers and other areas that benefit from that type of investment.
So you can, if you and I had a company and we invested in that type of either equipment or manufacturing infrastructure, we could get 39% back of our investment spread over time.
Spread over time, that's exactly correct.
So it's a term or a program probably, other than insiders, is not well known throughout the state, I would suggest. But yet it has done some pretty significant things. It's accomplished a lot. Can you share with us what that is?
Yeah. Since its inception in 2011, we've had about $75 million in tax credits, but we've generated $185 million in investment for the state.
Oh, wow, that is impressive.
It is, and even I think more importantly to Mainers as individuals, it's created 1,200 direct jobs and about 1,800 indirect jobs, so about 3,000 jobs for the state of Maine. Since its inception. So it's done a lot of good.
It sure has. So I'm familiar, as many people are, that earlier this year, or on or about April or March, in that time period, there was a part of your program that came under fire because of some investments that were made. First of all, tell us what that issue was that received such scrutiny and criticism. As a matter of fact, it came about the time you were going back to increase the ceiling.
That's right.
And this took front page coverage. But not only tell us what that is, but I also understand you're doing something to adjust to fix that. So first of all.
We have.
Yeah.
So I would describe the new market tax credit legislation intent is the right thing, as I've just described, for the state and the number of benefits we've had, but perhaps the right thing done wrong. There were absolutely some unintended consequences from the way the legislation was passed. Because it was patterned after the federal law, it allowed a mechanism known as a one-day loan to be utilized.
Yep.
And what a one-day loan did was allow the investing company to, in effect, end up with a result where they could put in less money than the total credit that they received back. So if they could borrow the money for 1 day, that would be apparently part of the total investment that was used to calculate the tax credit. Then it was paid back that same day, and sometimes the net amount of the investment that could go into the program ended up being less than the actual credit. I don't think anybody intended that effect on in the program.
But I think, to your point, sometimes these programs are certainly intended to do some great things, but time teaches us that there are adjustments that are necessary from time to time based on experience, and I think that's the instance here, and we need to openly address that. What are you doing to address that?
So we did two things. Number one, back in March, we offered an amendment to the legislature to end the use of one-day loans. Actually, this was prior to some of the news coming out and concerns. When those concerns came out, which were legitimate, I feel. We worked with the legislature and hoped that there would be passage of a bill that would correct the defect in the law. That didn't happen. The two sides couldn't come together in time, and they adjourned on July 16th, I think, without resolving it. So our first effort was to try to resolve it legislatively. When that didn't happen, we felt that the program should be adjusted based on our ability to make emergency rules.
Yeah.
So the first thing we did between July 16th and the middle of August was put a moratorium on any new loans. And then on August 20th, we passed an emergency rule
Yeah.
that essentially froze out the ability to make any more one-day loans and have this, what I think is an inappropriate use of the new market tax credit structure. Now we're in a phase right now, we're going through regular rulemaking. We've had a public hearing last month to hear from a number of constituents about the one-day rule as proposed in the emergency rulemaking we've had. And our board will meet on October 15th of this month to make a final ruling decision.
Yeah. It's clearly a program. I commend you for making that adjustments because it was clearly noted that it was an issue that was holding back the value of the program, and it got, one could argue, misused, misinterpreted, however, but to fix it is the important thing, and I commend you for doing that.
Thank you. And I think what's important in part of our vision in fixing this by rulemaking is I really hope when the legislature returns to this issue in the spring and that they will look at the new market tax credits and refund it.
Yeah, that was a good point. I mean, that's exactly where I was going because it was a real effort as this kind of blew up and became the issue of the day because of the success of the past of trying to expand it and to add more possibilities to reach out to many of our communities that certainly are in need of this type of help.
And Doug and Linda addressed it well. We don't have a lot of incentive programs in the state, particularly to attract investment from outside of the state. And the new market tax credit's been very effective in that. If you look at things like the revitalization of Brunswick has just been fantastic with Molinicki and Priority Group and Kestrel coming in. All of those very successful programs came about because of the new market tax credit.
There is one thing that this program is telling me in spades, and that is we don't do enough about promoting the value, the importance, and the use of these programs because in just this instance, it's pretty startling and very positive in terms of the impact that it's had.
Yes.
And let me ask this, from your perspective, you're a very respected business person who came to fame, and we're all very grateful that the governor chose you. But you've seen the business world for your entire career from, let's say, the other side. In your opinion of our tax incentives, you touched upon it as being fair, as being modest. But do you see it in that same way, that in order to get something in Maine, you really have to make an investment first?
I really think so. I mean, we're at the end of the country here. We have a lot of wonderful natural resources, but in terms of being located to major population centers and distribution centers, we're sometimes at a bit of a disadvantage. I think that's changing, and I think we're doing a lot of great things with our ports and other infrastructure to help with that. But we need people to think of Maine first as a great place to invest. And sometimes having a great program like this makes the difference in having people look at that and say, wow, I didn't realize that Maine has a great skilled workforce, a wonderful living environment, just a great healthcare system. We have so many advantages to offer to companies that would come in.
Yeah, it is absolutely the truth. And as I said it in the first segment, I repeated here, so often those incentives are game changers. They make the difference between whether or not the company grows or the company chooses to come to Maine. So they really are significant.
Yeah, you talked about my past business experience, but actually my eyes have been open since taking this job and working very closely with the Department of Economic and Community Development as we work with companies to come in. They are getting offers from other states that are very, very competitive. And we really have to innovate and think of a lot of different things to knit together an attractive package for them. And new market tax credits is one of the important ones I hope we keep in our basket.
Great way to end this segment. And we're going to be right back with my closing comments right after this. As I close out the program for this month, I leave you with this thought. Business tax incentives in our state is an issue that is of extreme concern to the Maine State Chamber of Commerce, just as it is, I'm sure, with most, if not all, economic development professionals in our state. The controversy, the confusion, the constant attacks on our programs are unfortunate. The rhetoric and the misleading information leave those programs and their future certainty in doubt. Add to that the very fact that on November 3rd, the very first question is a citizens' initiative that asks the voters to take additional dollars from our tax incentive programs and give them to candidates running for state office. This clearly is not the intended purpose of tax incentive programs. It is not the highest and best use. As a matter of fact, the highest and best use is to use those programs to grow our economy. Look around our state. Look at the communities struggling with businesses that are threatened by closure or laying off employees. Then tell me we do not need help to create job opportunities for the people of our state. Of course we do. And tax incentive programs help us to do that. Ours in this state are modest by definition. Yes, we need to review them and analyze them and strengthen them as time provides. But we have programs that we can use to compete. Time has taught us that. We can compete. They are competitive. We do have programs that make a difference. But we do need those programs to make a difference. That is our bottom line for this month. I thank our guests. I thank you for staying with us. And I also look forward to seeing you right back here in November. Remember, October is a beautiful month. Enjoy.